Joining me right now, Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts. He sits on the Environmental Committee as well as Foreign Relations Committee. Senators, we're just getting this in from Juana Summers. Some of the details about Ronnie Jackson, the allegations of misconduct now about Ronnie Jackson, and the details of what this is all about. You just heard Juana there. What's your reaction to this?
Well, my reaction is that the president clearly named him as the nominee to run the VA almost on a personal impulse. He likes him. He thinks he can run the entire VA. But clearly there was no comprehensive vetting of him for this job, not only in terms of his competence as a manager of an institution that has responsibility to provide benefits, medical benefits to the families of every veteran in our country, but also his own personal temperament and behavior. So now it comes to Congress to actually have to do the vetting that ordinarily is done by an administration, and clearly enough information has already surfaced that is calling for a timeout. While more information on a comprehensive basis can be gathered about him and his suitability for this critically important job to protect all American families.
Do you already hear enough, though, that you think that you do not think he's fit to be VA secretary?
Again, I think that the committee is taking the right posture on this issue. It's saying, let's stop, let's learn more, let's listen to people, let's hear from the whistleblowers, let's do a more detailed analysis of his background, both professionally and personally, and then we can make a decision. But I think that there are troubling signs that have already emerged, and I think on a bipartisan basis, Democrats and Republicans are saying, let's stop, let's learn more. This is too critical an institution that's already in need of serious help in order to make sure that the veterans of our country receive the services they deserve.
And that pause is happening as we speak on a bipartisan basis. Let's see how that plays out. I do want to ask you what we also just heard earlier from President Trump. He's meeting with the French president right now. The Iran deal was always going to be a very big topic of conversation between the two leaders. But President Trump issued a warning to Iran during their photo op when they were sitting down for their first sit-down meeting. Listen to this.
We're going to be talking about it. We'll see. I mean, people know my views on the Iran deal. It was a terrible deal. It should have never, ever been made. We could have made a good deal or a reasonable deal. The Iran deal is a terrible deal.
The Iranians say they'll restart their nuclear program if the deal...
We'll find out. You'll find out about that. It won't be so easy for them to restart. They're not going to be restarting anything. They restart it, they're going to have big problems, bigger than they've ever had before. And you can mark it down. They restart their nuclear program, they will have bigger problems than they have ever had before.
Senator, what's your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction is that the Iran nuclear deal is working. It has rolled back the Iranian nuclear program. It's under full scope monitoring by the International Atomic Energy Agency, and that agency says that Iran is in full compliance with the agreement. And if the president has problems with other aspects of Iran conduct, ballistic missiles, human rights, adventurism in other countries in the Middle East, then he already has authority to sanction Iran or Russia or anyone which is partnering with Iran, or he can come to Congress and ask for additional legal authority to do that. But it's hard to understand a strategy that would burn down the house in order to remodel the kitchen. If he feels that there are some problems with Iran, bring those problems to us, and we will try to work with him on a bipartisan basis to deal with those issues. But the deal itself is working, it is monitored, it has rolled back the Iranian program.
Emmanuel Macron has said, as he was heading into all of this, that he wants to convince Donald Trump to stay in the deal. Do you think that the French president can do that?
Well, my hope is that Macron and later on this week Merkel, along with other countries, persuade Donald Trump that it makes sense to stay in an agreement that has already been negotiated and is being monitored very closely by the International Atomic Energy Agency. I think if we look at a president that pulls out of the Paris climate accord, pulls out of an Iranian agreement, and then seeks to cut deals, for example, with North Korea on their nuclear program, then there won't be any credibility that the United States stands by the deals which it has already made. If the president wants to begin a process to deal with other problems, then let's all work on that. But these central issues that got resolved on an international basis are right now working, and he is destroying America's credibility to be the leader and not the laggard on international policy if he continues to pursue this course. That's why I'm hopeful that Macron and Merkel will be able to persuade him to stay inside of this agreement.
Seems a huge task ahead of them. Let's see what happens just today. Let's just get through today. But I do want to ask you real quickly about yesterday. A funny thing happened in committee. A kind gesture, which seems such a rarity these days. Republican Senator Johnny Isakson, he couldn't be at the vote for the Secretary of State nominee, Mike Pompeo, because he was at a funeral of his very best friend. The vote was tied. The committee would need to wait until something like 11 p.m. or midnight last night to get Isakson to fly back and then cast his vote in support of Mike Pompeo. With the outcome certain, but just very much delayed, Democratic Senator Chris Coons offered to vote yes as a gesture to Johnny Isakson. What did you think of that gesture in committee?
Well, that's typical of Chris Coons, and it was a courtesy gesture to Johnny Isakson and to the committee, rather than reconvening last night at 11:15, which was the other alternative. Instead, there was an ability on a bipartisan basis in the Foreign Relations Committee to find a resolution of it that was respectful, especially of Johnny Isakson and his need to deliver the eulogy for his best friend at his funeral.
But
and
Senator,
so I think
it seems that it's such a rarity that these kind gestures happen, maybe at least in public, that Bob Corker, the chair of the committee, he was visibly moved afterward. Just for our viewers, if they haven't had a chance to see it, I want to play for you Bob Corker after the committee meeting and Chris Coons explaining his reasoning why he did it for Johnny Isakson. Please join me and listen.
I in particular want to thank Senator Coons for displaying the statesmanship that I've been accustomed to seeing in the Senate. Senators at the right time can do outstanding things.
When my father died, a Republican senator who I did not know well came up to me on the floor and said, if you need to miss the next vote, I'll pair with you. I'll vote. I'll either leave or vote the way you would have voted so it doesn't change the outcome. And that meant a great deal to me. So every now and then we should find our way towards each other in ways like this.
It really was an amazing gesture. What do you think moved Senator Corker so much, though?
I think it was probably the combination of the fact that Senator Isakson was delivering a eulogy at a funeral, and the kind of this very rare moment in the Trump era where people were trying to show personal courtesy to one another. And by the way, it happens on a daily basis in the Senate, where on a personal level people are still friends, but the overarching environment within which we work is one of bitter, acrimonious partisanship. And so I think that's why this was a moment that will stand out, but it is not, unfortunately, from my perspective, as we're now talking about Ronnie Jackson, talking about Scott Pruitt, talking about pulling out of the Iran deal, likely to affect the larger atmosphere within which we are continuing to work in the Trump era.
I sure would like to see those daily personal connections play out more publicly more often. It's good to note it when it happens. Thank you, Senator, for coming in. I appreciate it.
It was a beautiful moment. We hope that it's going to be replicated, but it's only with our fingers crossed that we express that hope, because the atmosphere in general just doesn't lend itself to that.
Well, hope springs eternal. Keep those fingers and toes crossed, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you.